It's all just in your head.
Katie, there's something in my room. You believe me, don't you?
There's no such thing as monsters. You need to grow up. I'm serious, Sawyer. I need to be alone.
You're both having these manifestations. What is this supposed to be? It's the thing that comes for your kids when you're not paying attention.
Dad, you have to listen to me.
Okay. I'm listening. Sweetheart, let me handle it.
How's it going?
Good. How you doing, Rob?
Yeah, not too bad.
Yeah, I like the poster.
Oh yeah, good. My favorite movie.
Have you seen the new one, Evil Dead Rise, yet?
I've seen the new one like 3 times. It's great.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I haven't caught it yet, so I'm kind of behind.
Yeah, Lee did a great job. It's got Evil Dead 2 vibes actually. Like it's kind of, you know, Tufede's Evil Dead 1. It's pretty mad.
That's awesome. That's good. I'm looking forward to seeing it, especially now hearing that, because Evil Dead 2 was, yeah.
Yeah.
I did see the Boogeyman. You know, it's crazy. I was just talking with a friend this morning, my best friend actually, and the Boogeyman. I asked him. I said, "Has the Boogeyman, was that in your life when you were a child?" And he's like, "Yeah." And then we each have our own kind of perception or way to describe what we thought the Boogeyman was, and I think it's just embedded in every culture. And this film brought that back, that childhood fear.
Oh, that's great.
I got goosebumps right now. It brought it back out.
Yeah.
And it started, allowing me to remember, what my grandparents would say, come back inside on time. The Boogeyman's gonna get you, So it brought all that back, which was lovely. Making the adults feel like kids again.
Yeah, that was totally the intention. That was what my kind of vision for the movie was when I first came on board. I was like, if I can make people feel like that terrified kid again, waking up in the middle of the night, imagining something lurking in the darkness.
And also, the selling point for me in this film was that it really felt like a haunted house movie as well. And that was a hell of a lot of fun. Can you tell me what the collaboration process was with Stephen King's short story and how you expanded it? Because I know it was short and you just turned this into a full feature film.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I came on board. This project had already been in development for a little bit. Beck and Woods had done a draft, and I remembered the short story when I first got sent it. I remembered reading the short story as a kid. I remember it messed me up as a kid, along with a lot of those other short stories. And my first thought was like, how have they done that? Because it doesn't seem like an obvious short story to adapt. It's 12 pages, 8 pages, 2 people in a room. It's the entire short story is just this therapy session. And then when I read Beck and Woods' first draft, I just thought it was such a genius idea of how to expand out the short story. Basically, opening with the short story pretty much in Act 1 and letting that kick off a whole new set of events. And Beck and Woods, and I'm going to steal this, they described the movie as being both an adaptation of the short story and a sequel to the short story, all in one, which I thought was a great way of doing it. And we ended up, I worked with Mark Heyman, who's the writer who's kind of largely responsible for the movie that ended up on screen, and we developed it off in a different direction, but the groundwork had been laid in such an amazing way by Beck and Woods. And all throughout the process of adapting it, it was about going back to that short story, going back to King, and making sure that even though we were building it out and we were reinventing things, it all felt true to his body of work.
And then did Stephen King, did he provide any feedback on the project for you guys, like on a screenplay, or was he in contact with with you at all during production?
He was. I mean, he was very keen on us making it our own thing as well, and us feeling like we had freedom to develop it in, whatever direction we saw fit. But we sent him the script just before we went to go shoot. Excuse me, and he was really enthusiastic about the script. He was on a book tour at the time, and he was kind of shouting out about this movie as we were going into production, which was amazing. It gave us such a kind of second wind as we were into production. He was saying how he'd read the script for the Boogeyman, is really excited about it, and how it was a great way of taking a short story and adapting it out and earning a 90-minute runtime based on such a short piece of material. And yeah, he gave us a couple of great notes, and then he saw the movie, I think, a couple of weeks before we locked the edit, and had a couple of great ideas, but completely loved the movie, and has just been so supportive ever since.
Well, that is awesome, because I know he'll tell you if he doesn't like it, for sure.
Oh, I was terrified of that. Terrified.
Yeah, I bet. And that brings me to kind of segues in my next question. It had to have been overwhelming at times. I mean, I'm overwhelmed thinking how overwhelming it was for you, possibly, because this is the king of horror, How did you stay focused and deal with that process of possibly being overwhelmed from all of this?
Well, I tried not to think about this film in the canon of Stephen King and other Stephen King movies, because I think that would be a bit paralyzing. But we had ambitions for this movie. We wanted this to be in the upper echelons of the great Stephen King adaptations, and it was really about making sure that we told this story as well as possible. And when King fed back in such a lovely way on the script, that made me feel, going into production and we're getting ready to shoot this, that okay, we've understood the short story, built on the short story in a way that he thinks is worthwhile. This isn't some silly endeavor that's going to blow up in our faces. We're on the right track. And so his involvement throughout the process was just a good steer that we were heading in the right direction.
That's good, because it definitely shows. I mean, it came out very well, because I know sometimes when there's been adaptations in the past of his films, or of his writings, and some of them have flopped, especially in the 90s. There were a few.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the thing. There's the upper crust of Stephen King adaptations, but then there's a whole kind of a graveyard of adaptations which haven't quite hit the spot. Yeah,
most definitely. And Stephen King's known for his drawing inspiration for his people, observing their behaviors, their quirks, their mannerisms. He observes how they interact, and he brings out that reliable character authentication. He just brings so much realism to his characters, and it's just amazing. I think that's what attracts so many people to his writings.
Yeah. And
with that being said, with Sadie, Will, and Sawyer, those characters, the family dynamic, your cast was phenomenal in the film. Was there anything that they did that may have surprised you, or you didn't expect once they were in front of that camera?
Oh, everything. I mean, that's my favorite part of the process, is working with cast, and also just assembling the right cast to have you have those distinctive personalities that they're going to bring to the part, that they're going to bring to the screen. And I made this movie coming off 2 improvised movies. Host and Dashcam were improvised off beat sheets, and so there was a really joyful process of discovery on both of those movies. And on Boogeyman, this being my first studio movie, I was like, well, there's not going to be any room for that. And then very quickly into production, I realized that we could totally bring a lot of that spontaneity and that energy from the previous indie movies. And so I was able to work with the actors and improvise and play around with the scenes. And so much of so many of the funniest moments, of the most tender moments in the movie, come from the cast improvising or just bringing a bit of themselves to the role. I'm thinking especially of Vivian Lyra Blair as Sawyer. So much of the humor in the movie and of that character comes directly from her, because she's such a kind of funny, characterful human being.
That is great. And that, and that is something that you've worked in the indie world. Now you're jumping into a studio production. So I'm sure that those processes in that world really prepared you for this one. Because this is your first big directorial debut, studio.
Yeah. I'd been doing a lot of TV before, but I never really thought I would be the found footage guy, but I was for a couple of years. And before that I was doing a lot of TV, and some of that was nothing on the scale of this, but I was doing some big TV stuff, and it had been about 3 years since I'd been on a real film set shooting with real cameras. Everything else had been shot on iPhones.
Yeah.
So I was a little worried that I just wouldn't remember how to do it, or I'd be a little rusty. But no, it felt like it was in continuity with those other two films. I see this as 3 movies. These are my kind of 2020 to 23 run, and they've all got similar DNA. That
is awesome. And then earlier, we talked about the boogeyman, the culture, the folklore, the monster that's hidden in the shadows, under the beds, waiting to scare us, jump out when we were kids. A lot of times, parents, grandparents would use that to get their kids to obey them. The boogeyman's going to get you. A lot of times it's Santa Claus isn't going to bring you a gift, but it's always the boogeyman's going to get you if you step out of line. Can you talk to me about the design of your boogeyman? Because it was quite terrifying.
Yeah.
And what went into that design, and how did you just create such a horrible monster?
Well, it's like you say, everyone's got their own interpretation of the creature, and this creature exists in so many different cultures, and we wanted to find a design that was stark and simple enough that it kind of still left room for people's own nightmare interpretations to be put on top of it. It had to have a kind of childlike simplicity to it. So
yeah,
it was working with the design teams, and one of the things that I would make sure is every time we got a new design in, it comes in and it's beautifully 3D and it's lit and it looks very cinematic. The first thing I would do is get them to draw it in crayon like a kid would draw it, to make sure that it was simple enough that you could boil it down to like a kid's perception of the thing. And I wanted this to not be, this is a different beast from something like Pennywise, who is someone who kind of that he's a creature that kind of feeds on your fear and mirrors it back to you. Whereas this, I wanted to almost feel like the origin of fear. This is something that's ancient and has existed as long as there's been darkness. And boogeyman is just the word that we put to it as children. But it wanted to feel more primal than that. And so we spent a long time on the design and really didn't lock it until about 2 weeks before production, which was, very, very close to the wire.
Yeah. Hey, it came out good. That's all that matters. Is there a jump scare that you've maybe watching a film or even a series that's really just got you, that you still think about today?
Yes. Lots. I mean, I love The Conjuring 2, which is one of my favorite horror movies, and I watch those set pieces over and over and over because I think James Wan is such a master at wrong-footing you. But the one I was thinking of is it's in Mike Flanagan's Ouija 2, Origin of Evil, which I think is it's one of the most fun jump scares, and it's basically it's not even a very big one. It's basically the camera is pushing towards a creaky door, like the door is starting to creak open or something like that, or the wind is blowing through the window and you think the door's going to burst open, and then suddenly the character just sits up into shot and wakes up as from a bad dream and completely jolts you. And it's just it's one of those jump scares where you jump and then you laugh right afterwards because
I do vaguely remember that scene, and that was a well done film.
Yeah, it's very playful, which I like, and I like that in my jump scares. That's what I try and go for is you're kind of leading the audience to something familiar, and then you roll with something that comes,
And by doing it that way, you're not really cheating the audience. It's not necessarily just that loud noise.
Yeah, No, the audience has to know they're in the game. You know that the game has begun, and then it's all about how you're going to get them. I think
Yeah, I
if
can
it's just a loud noise out of nowhere, then nobody's having fun.
yeah, but if you can toy with them, that's where it's at.
Yeah, exactly.
During the production, since it was a studio film, were you given a lot of creative freedom, more than maybe you thought, or less? Was there something that you actually were able to do that surprised you, versus not being able to take care of something that you wanted?
Yeah, I mean, the weird thing is I've been kind of waiting and waiting for the other shoe to drop on this one. I completely assumed that I'd be, fighting every creative decision, and that I'd have to kind of compromise what I wanted to do compared to the other two movies that I'd just done. And actually, like, every single frame of this movie is my movie, and it was just such a kind of great collaborative process between me and the studio, which sounds like I'm just blowing smoke, but it was I think because we all set out to make the same movie at the very top of the process. I wanted this to be something that people could go and watch and enjoy on a Friday night, that this was going to be a big screen popcorn horror movie that then happened to have, some real weight and bite to the dramatic scenes. But it was, the moment that I thought, well, maybe we're going to have to start making some compromises, is when we decided on this being a PG-13 movie. It was a bit up in the air for a while, and as I went into production, I thought it was an R-rated movie. We then decided to make it PG-13, which I think is totally the right choice, because it becomes like a gateway horror. It's the Boogeyman. It's something that we want to bring in audiences who are closer to that age of the terrified kids staring into their closet. And I thought, when that PG-13 discussion came up, that a lot of the violence and the more shocking moments would have to be edited down, and I'm kind of amazed with how much we got away with. I think this is about as hard as a PG-13 will ever go.
Yeah, no, it's, after watching it, you tend to forget that you're in a PG-13 movie.
Yes.
At that point, once I got through halfway, it was irrelevant, R, PG-13. I just felt like at home. So it's exactly what I wanted. So that is awesome, especially to have to switch in between and not losing, because that's just the worst. You put all this time, effort, money into something, and then it's just taken away from you. I just can't imagine how.
Yeah. No. I'm so glad we didn't have to cut anything down.
And then I have to ask you, what's your favorite Stephen King novel, and then maybe your favorite Stephen King film or series?
My favorite novel is probably, it's a boring one, it's probably Pet Sematary. I just think
that's a good one, though. No,
it's the best, but it's probably everyone's favorite. Like that novel disturbed me.
Yeah,
does to this day so much. I read that when I was a teenager, and
I did too.
I do, I think there have been good adaptations of it. But it's to me, it's the definitive Stephen King novel. And then, movie wise, a couple of weeks ago I would have said The Shining.
Okay.
But then I went to the New Beverly Tarantino cinema, and I saw Carrie on 35mm, and I hadn't seen it in about 10 years. And that is the best Stephen King adaptation, hands down. It's probably De Palma's best movie now in my head. I mean, I'm a huge De Palma guy. I think it's got the kind of warmth and compassion of King, but it's got the style and the cruelty of De Palma, and it just completely, it manages to be both the best De Palma movie and the best Stephen King movie, I think.
And Carrie still holds up today. I probably revisit that like once every couple of years.
It's a perfect movie, I think.
No, most definitely. I know Pet Sematary, that film, I saw it, I think in '89 when it came out. I was like 9 years old, and it scared the crap out of me, and then I read the book, a couple of years later, teenager. So, and then on our website, we had broke a story that I'm not sure exactly what the source was, that you were wanting to remake The Langoliers.
Oh, the source is me just telling everyone who will listen.
Okay.
I it's a project that I've been kind of touting around for a while, and a short story that I've always wanted to adapt. And it's one of those great King short stories that hasn't found a definitive adaptation. You know, the TV movie is fun, but I don't think anyone thinks that's the definitive take on the material. And yeah, no, it was what I mean when I started talking to King after he'd seen the movie, he sent me a message saying that he'd love to try and find something else to do together. And immediately I was like, I always wanted to do the Langoliers, and he was excited about that. And it's not happening yet.
Yeah.
The rights are tied up, and we're trying to find the right way to do it. But it's a story that I love, and I've got a great kind of terrifying take on it that's being developed.
And if you were to take a stab at it, would you do it as a miniseries? I think it was a miniseries back in the 90s, or would you do a feature film?
I think it would be a feature. I think that's the best place for it.
That works. And unfortunately, I know it did flop. I remember watching it on television, so I think that's if anyone's going to do it, I think right now you're the one to take that risk. You know, you've already done this one, and this one turned out wonderfully. So, I mean, that would be great.
Yeah. No, I think, and it's it's not one of those ones where most people don't even remember the TV movie. So I think you could come at it fresh without any of that baggage.
Well, exactly, just like this one. I mean, the Boogeyman, I forgot where it came from, and I had to go back and look. And that's right, it came from Night Shift. So, I think another person I had talked to, the same thing. They're like, I don't remember this, and I go, well, it's part of Night Shift. That might be why it kind of got intertwined with everything else. So, definitely, like you said, I think you put a fresh twist on it for all of us.
Oh, let's hope so.
And then, I have a fan question for you. It's kind of a funny one from James Diaz in Lancaster, California. Wants to know, are you afraid of the Boogeyman?
You know what? I'm pretty skeptical about everything. And then if I wake up at 3 a.m. during the witching hour, and there's a noise in my house, I believe in everything. I believe in ghosts. I believe in the Boogeyman. I believe in witchcraft. And then the sun comes up and I'm skeptical again. But in those moments of fear, sure, I believe in in all.
I love it. That's a great way of explaining it. Yeah, that kind of somewhat happens to me too. I mean, that darkness, and once that darkness floats away and it's light, I'm like, nah.
Yeah.
I don't think there's really nothing wrong, nothing out there.
Yeah, right now, no. Maybe in 12 hours from now, maybe.
And is there anything else you're working on right now?
Yeah, a bunch of stuff. I got a bunch. I mean, everything's stopped. That obviously for the writer's strike. But as soon as that resolves, there's a bunch of projects that are almost ready to go. What can I talk about? No, there's lots of exciting stuff. Some of it original, some of it based on some of my short films, and then I'm working with a couple of exciting properties that it's all I can't talk about much of it now, but there's so many things that I'm really excited to dive into.
That is awesome. And hopefully the writer's strike, they give these writers what they deserve. They lock it up and everybody can get back to work, and we can start seeing some more of your stuff.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much, Rob. It was a pleasure. Great movie. And I can't wait to see what's next from you.
I'm looking forward to chatting on the next one.
All right, me too.
See ya.
Have a good day, and thank you again.
See ya. Bye bye.
Take care.